Hey, everybody. It's the ShopNotes Podcast. I'm Phil with John and Logan today, and this is episode number 222. And today's episode, we'll go through some listener comments. We'll get a wrap-up on Logan's desk and see what there is to see on the other side of the mountain. This episode is brought to you by Harvey Industries. When good enough is not good enough, see all of our new tools at harveywoodworking.com. Just a couple of questions that I want to pick up from last week's episode. And the first of them is from Ryan McGregor. He wants to know when there's going to be more videos of shop tour of my home shop. And the answer to that is when it's not zero. It's cold out and my shop has no heat. So, and also right now it's a disaster.
Got to clean before company comes.
Yeah, I feel ya.
Yeah. It's got one of those, like, I've brought stuff into work and to classes and then take it home and sort of just unload it real quick and then go inside because it's
That's how mine is too. It's like open the garage door, throw out the boxes in the trash into the garage, and then close the door again. Pile it all on the workbench. Deal with it later.
Yep.
I have no excuse other than I'm building crap.
You're actually getting work done.
Yep. All right. And then the other one that I want to get to is Walter Riggs. He's asking about last week's discussion on pre-finishing. Mm-hmm. He says, what do you do about getting finish sprayed onto your glue surfaces? Sand it off? Tape it prior to spraying? If you tape it, it seems like that would take as much time as it would if you just finished the whole piece fully assembled.
So I pre-taped everything. And it didn't take near as long as you would expect. Because now I'm going to preface this by saying I pre-finished in stages. So my panels were pre-finished before the frame and panels were glued up. And then that frame and panel got glued up. And then I took that panel and finished it, if that makes sense. So I wasn't like individually pre-finishing each rail and style. Instead, I would oil the panels, glue everything up, oil the frame, the rails and stiles, and then that entire, 26 by 20 panel would go into the spray booth, get hung up, and then oiled and sprayed.
Okay.
Same thing with the legs. The legs, before I glued those onto those frame and panels. No, I'm sorry. Let me back up a little bit. Oil the panels, glue up the frame and panel, glue up the legs. So I had end panels with a leg attached on each end. And then the legs with attached panels got sprayed. The back panel, I taped off the tenon. I taped off the mortises on those legs. Long story short, it was very little taping. It was maybe a total of 5 minutes of taping. It wasn't bad. I've heard tricks on using like backer rod that you'd use like in concrete and shoving that in the mortises. And I think that would work really well. My fear was I didn't know if denatured alcohol, which is the solvent for shellac, if that would melt it. And then I'd be stuck with a gooey mess, But I did. I taped everything off. Didn't take hardly any time. It worked really well.
Okay. I think the level of pre-finishing that you do and can do also depends on the construction method.
Yes.
Because if you were building, like those built-in units that I did last year, those big plywood units, I did a bunch of pre-finishing on those. But because we're dealing with if you're dealing with a lot of like Dado's rabbits kind of thing, that's a lot of taping.
Yes.
And precise taping that you need to do. And then that was harder to do. But I did a lot of that with biscuits. So I used the biscuits as the joinery method so I could do more pre-finishing. And I think like you were saying on your desk with mortise and tenon construction, you know, like your panels can float. There's no need for them to have to be glued structurally.
Yep.
So taping off tenons is really easy to do because you have like hard shoulders to go around and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was not a big deal by any means. So,
yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily that pre-finishing was going to save me time per se. I mean, maybe a little bit. It was more the quality of finish that I'm getting is much better.
Right.
Because I think no matter what, spraying the insides of cabinets, you do not get the same level of finish that you do as spraying a flat panel or spraying the outsides. That's why cabinet makers use UV pre-finished plywood, because then they don't have to finish the inside.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, and if you say you were even to have tried to do stain on that desk, like we, you know, when we did that bookcase that's in your office.
Yep.
And putting dye and stain on that after it's constructed, all the little nooks and crannies just make it awful to deal with, to get like a decent coat of stain on.
And not get it on the back of your shirt.
Right. There is that. Walter has a follow-up. He said, on Saturday, 2:15, I went out to the wood shop to finish up our bedside tables. The last step, cutting a piece of butcher block off the big slab from the home center. It weighed 125 pounds, and I hefted it up. I needed to get another grip with my left hand so I could flip it onto my table saw. So I put the whole slab's weight on my right arm so that I could move my left. When I did, my right bicep Charlie horsed itself, and it snapped the tendon connecting the bicep to the elbow. Reattachment will take surgery, and that's on 3/6. So everyone, get out there and work out. Use yoga and stretching exercises to strengthen your tendons and keep yourself limber. You do not want any part of this.
Oh, no, you do not. Yuck.
So there you are. Getting old is real, people.
Mm.
All right, so you are now at your desk in your office.
Sitting at my desk, yep. The cat's, it's a jungle gym. This is not a desk, it's a jungle gym. It doesn't have any drawers or doors on it, but it's in the office sitting here. It's got drawer slides installed. This is the first time I've really ever used bottom mount drawer slides. Always used side mounts. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to use bottom mounts. There's rails that the slides can mount to, so it worked out really nicely. And I like them. Trying to figure out how to size the drawer for the bottom mount slides is a little different because the bottom mount slides have to fit underneath and inside of the sides, if that makes sense. So, I started dovetailing the drawers last night. I'll finish those up today, and then I got to work on the door. And I've kind of been bouncing back and forth on what I'm doing for this door. And I asked you guys. It's like I drew up a couple sketches. It's like, do I do like it needs to have some form of ventilation because my computer's going to go inside this left-hand cabinet. So I need some form of vent. Is that like a Kumiko panel on the front, which I have a hard time not making it look like it's a Mike Pekovich piece then, you know what I mean? Right or wrong, like,
right.
And I love Mike to death. I mean, he'll be out here in a couple weeks filming with us. Like, it's like that's so iconic of his style. And I'm like, I don't want to do that really. So then I'm like, okay, do I just do like a lattice work front? Like do like an oak half lap lattice work front, or, the arts and crafts and, a lot of that arts and crafts style stuff has cutout shapes in panels. And there's a lot to choose from there. So I think I've settled on doing that. So I'm going to do a frame and panel door, but then we're going to do a cutout motif on the front. Is it going to be the white tree of Gondor? Maybe.
All right.
Because I mean, that kind of looks like it's an arts and crafts design. So
it does.
We may roll with that. Yeah, we may roll with that. So it'll be
Goose
cool.
wants coffee.
He wants attention. And it was 59 degrees when I walked into the shop this morning, so I think he's probably cold, and he's just excited to have another living being in here.
Yeah, another warm body.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when we're filming or recording this episode, it is now 9 whole degrees outside, which
15 degrees warmer than it was yesterday.
Right. Yeah. Because what did the weather folks said? We had 110 hours of wind chill below 0.
Yeah.
So that was.
I've not had the bathroom in the shop turned on in the last month.
I was wondering about that. If you just had that.
No, I mean, the utilities are out in the cold storage side,
right?
In a little room that's insulated and stuff. But I also have my air compressor in there. I'm like, well, it takes me 30 seconds to winterize the pipes in here. You know what I mean? Like, I disconnect the water feed from the frost-free hydrant, put the RV blowout on it, and just plug it into the air compressor. And then I walk in and just turn all the faucets on, and it's winterized. Like, it's nothing crazy. And it's a whole lot less headache until this spring when it does warm up. I am going to pull the steel on the outside of the building off and figure out where the pipes are freezing. I know exactly where it is. And I'm just going to add more insulation to avoid this issue in the future.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, cause you have the bathroom out there and for water running and whatever. So it'd be nice to be able to use it.
Yeah. It's a 3-season bathroom.
It's just that other season when you have to go outside. That's the one that.
Yeah. And then it's, -10.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So anything on the drawers? Did you decide what's your joinery on the drawers then?
They're dovetail boxes. They're just dovetailed boxes. Yep. False fronts. I think that's going to be the cleanest look. It's going to be the most straightforward. And yeah, yep. Nothing crazy on them. I'm not hand dovetailing them. I'm leaving late next week. So, wife and I are taking a little minication. So I just want to get them done. So I am running the dovetails on the Panto router, which is working really, really nicely for dovetails. Have not dovetailed on it before. I know Colin has. Colin's done them on the Panto router. And again, once you figure it out and once you know that machine, it's like, oh yeah, like no issue. So
sure.
It just takes a little dialing in. The biggest thing is that the Panto router has a board width capacity of 8 inches. And 8 inches is not deep enough to do the lower drawer. The lower drawer is, I think, 12.5 inches tall. It's a double deep drawer. There is a way to do them though. You have to make registration marks to align every board to. Not that big a deal. John Henry and Mac at Panto Router actually have a PDF on their site on dovetailing wider pieces. If you're doing like a blanket chest or whatever. So I'm just following that. I mean, no issues. So, it just, every time I use it, I'm like, I love this thing. Like, not sponsored, but like, I love it. The only problem I was having is it's like, and this is more of a me issue than anybody, but like, it's so hard to take photos on the Panto router because you can't really see what's going on because there's a dust shroud around it.
Yeah.
And then if you take the dust shroud off, it's like, oh, I can see what's going on. But it also really then looks like this thing makes a giant mess in the shop. And that's not the case because the dust shroud's removed. So, But yep. So that is my day today, and probably this weekend is finish up these drawers. I do have a little finagling to do with this center drawer. The center drawer is a pull-out keyboard tray, and obviously the front needs to drop down so you can access the keyboard.
Right.
So I am doing for lack of better term, it's a shallow drawer without any sides. Okay. It has a false front. So there's a front and a false front. The false front is bigger. And I am using Butler tray hinges so that false front and the front will stand up to 90. But then when it lays down, the false front will register against the bottom side of the tray to hold it flat and level, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I think it's going to work. I haven't built it yet, so this is all theory. I think it will work. I sketched it out in my head on the napkin. Yeah, we'll see.
All right.
We'll see. So
this
is a modern craftsman desk. So computer cubby, pull-out drawer for keyboard.
That's fine.
Yep.
I think it works.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were building giant armoires to put TVs in. So
that's true. Whatever happened to those?
All right. Speaking of Dovetails, I would like you and John to tell the story of a certain set of sliding dovetails that occurred this week on the set of the Woodsmith Shop TV show.
Better yet, if we weren't recording right now and it needs to get published today, I would have Nate just grab that video and put it in the podcast. And the sound, I mean, just the sound.
If you've heard of John Henry versus the steam engine, that's basically the story.
So we were filming one of our TV show episodes this week. And it is a game table designed by Dylan Baker. I don't remember what issue it was, 272?
In that range.
Sure.
Something? I don't know.
Yeah,
somewhere. Anyways, Chris built the frame. We're building it out of walnut that I had on hand. Was the jankiest walnut ever. As soon as John and I started cutting into it, we should have just bailed on it.
We're no quitters.
Whatever. But we didn't. So, nope, it has a lot of character. This, I don't know what happened to this tree, but this tree had some issues. Anyways, Chris did the frame. My part was desliding the legs. So the legs are, think of a mock or a Roubeau bench. Okay. Think of how the legs of a Roubeau bench go into the top with a dovetail. That's how these are. Now, there's no shoulder on the legs. So they're just straight dovetailed all the way down from top to bottom. So basically, they're a trapezoid shape. And yeah, 4 legs, 2 stretchers connect each leg, one right underneath the top assembly, one down at the bottom. Got them all glued together. And I'm like, you know what? Let's do this entire glue up at once. Like these dovetails are going to slide in. Stretchers are going to be glued in. Once everything's where it needs to go, I wanted to give it a little bit of wiggle room. Then we'll apply the clamps.
And I heard it was a little tight when we were fitting it, but what I heard was that the glue will act as a lubricant to get it together. The famous line.
I did say this
because we were using liquid hide glue.
Mm-hmm.
I did say this. So I started putting it together, and it was one of those, John, come help.
And the camera's rolling.
It was tight.
And the glue is sticking. It's like, we got to get this together.
Well, okay. I don't know that the glue was sticking necessarily. I think they were just cut perfectly. They were at machine tolerances, not woodworking tolerances. Yes.
Yeah.
So John and I are trying to get these legs in upside down. So we're on sawhorses. Legs are going in from the top down into the frame. and John was on a clamp on one side. I had the world's smallest wooden mallet on the other, and I am beating the ever loving shit out of this thing. Like, and I hope Nate does not bleep that out, because I was like just walloping this thing. I think I compressed 1/2-inch plywood down to 1/4-inch plywood as I was pounding this thing together. And it worked. Right. Like, I don't know what the big deal is. It worked. It just, it was comical because it was a very tight fit.
Yeah. Well, and then when you have an assembly that's essentially 3 feet wide, those two legs need to go in roughly at the same pace. Yep. Otherwise, you're torquing the whole assembly, which makes the fit even tighter, because now the legs are, like tilting one way or the other.
Yep.
And even binding even more. So,
yeah. Yeah. And, let's be fair. Me being John Henry, because I'm the one hammering it, right? I started to make some good progress once Phil walked over and handed me a 3-pound ball peen hammer. Or cross peen hammer. And at that point, I started making up ground because John had the mechanical advantage with the parallel clamp and just tightening it, but it was
you can easily see on camera which one of those two went to engineering school and which one was in graphic arts.
Now, to be fair, the second set of legs, which I'm hoping is not what they use on the show. I hope they use that first set of video clip on the show. I was like, let's loosen these up a little bit. And I just took like 3 swipes of a smoothing plane and they slipped right in.
Yeah.
But man, it was awesome.
Yeah. It was still a really nice fit on those other ones, but it was amazing how just a small number of hand plane passes were required in order to change that whole dynamic.
Yep. Yeah. It was it was fun. I don't think I could have gotten those together by myself. I mean, maybe, but man, my right arm would be massive compared to my left, because there was a lot of hammering that had to happen for that one leg to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but janky walnut aside, tight dovetails aside,
it's
looking pretty good.
It is, and it's amazing to me, even after the fact that I should know this, after as many projects as I build, there is a hard middle in a project where it just kind of looks tough. There's little bits that just need to be cleaned up or squeeze out, or things look gappy or whatever. But as you start going over it with like I cleaned up the top surface with a block plane and leveled out the legs and, sanding and filling, and all of a sudden it's starting to come together and be more of a cohesive piece instead of like a bunch of photo props that got stuck together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And to be fair, so I'm not a huge fan of the construction of this thing. I'll be the first one to say it, because it has basically 3-inch thick walnut. That's the frame. That's the top. That's
the
like
top
the
frame.
Body.
Yeah.
Yep. The body of it. It is glued together, 1.5-inch thick walnut. The ends are mitered, and I'm not.
You lost me at miters
construction method, because that leaves a. Yeah. I mean, that leaves a lot of room for stuff to go wrong. And what happened with this walnut is, John and I were cutting around a lot of cracks and stuff. This tree must have had some really bad wind shake or something. But we're also cutting it when it is -8 degrees outside. There is 0% humidity right now. And as soon as we start cutting it and you join it and you plane it, let it sit for an hour, it's moved all over because it's losing moisture still. So you combine that with trying to laminate stuff and get miters to fit. I know Chris fought it. But at the end of the day, it looks pretty good. Hindsight, this tree would have been much better cut into small chair parts or something, like small box parts. But it is what it is. Walnut has different grades than everything, so we had some knots we were fighting around, trying to avoid and stuff. But she'll end up pretty cool, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing on this table is we took a different approach than what than what Mark talked about when he built it.
Yeah.
For the magazine. Because like you said, the top layer or the top frame is a double layer 1.5 inches. Mark ended up making the inside layer 1.5 inches first, and then wrapping miters
Stamping
around
on the rest,
the outer layer. Whereas if you glue those pieces up first and then miter it, now all of a sudden, instead of cutting miters in 1.5 inch pieces, you cutting miters on 3-inch pieces. And that's a much harder proposition in terms of workpiece control. Like if you're going to do that on the table saw, like you almost can't make that cut in a single pass on the table saw. And if you're at a miter saw, again, you got to have the right blade set up and the type of cut, because it's very easy for the blade to wander a little bit in the cut, or the head on the miter saw to shift a little bit just because of how much material you're trying to remove and how much surface area that miter has. So, it's one of those things where it's what is your level of comfort in making those kind of cuts, and what do you want to make twice as many miter cuts or fewer miter cuts but in much thicker parts? So, but Chris spent less time than I thought in fine tuning those miters and getting them to fit, and they're tight. So,
I mean, 20 years of knowing him, Phil. Come on. Like, less time than I thought. What do you mean?
Yeah. So, although it did kind of have me flashing back to that giant dining table that you did for somebody.
Yeah.
Right? But those were flat miters, right?
No, that was a poker table.
Oh, poker table. That's right.
And they were 22.5 degrees. It was an octagon.
Yeah.
And that would turn out fine. It just, those were like 4-inch thick by 8-inch wide pieces. They were big. That was big. That was just a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Me hating construction methods is not only limited to Dylan designs. It also is my designs included.
No, that's true. I will say I do like the dovetailed leg construction. I think that adds a really cool look to it.
Yeah. I would prefer, I think, a square leg down the bottom, but that's because I like that look in like a bench or a table.
Oh, sure.
A little too modern for me, but that's just because I like traditional stuff. So,
yeah. This episode is brought to you by Harvey Industries. When good enough is not good enough, see all of our new tools at harveywoodworking.com. So we're probably 3/4 of the way done on the project. Like yesterday in my filming, I did the recessed playing surface and made some cleats that will support the upper surface. And by me, I mean John mostly. Let's be fair there.
How did that walnut match?
It looks fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah.
So the original stock we used was air dried. Very beautiful color. Purpley, just kind of that air dried walnut. The material I brought in yesterday for those cleats needed to be longer. and all I had was kiln dried stock. So I didn't know if it was going to be a little more brown or if it.
I mean, it's within reason.
I think it's about the same. Yeah, I think it's about the same color. Not enough
Oh,
where,
cool.
We've done some other stuff where we've had air dried stuff and then the kiln dried and steamed stuff, and that's pretty stark.
Just like our veneer is going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least those will be separate pieces, so that's not a.
Yeah.
I'll have to say too that we were trying to get like the legs out of what wood we had here, and we ended up with one leg that had like a bark inclusion in it. It was cracked, and we ended up filling it with black super glue and different things. And I think that's the coolest looking leg after it was all said and done.
Which is saying something, because John
Right.
is usually like, hide them wherever you can.
That it's like you get 90% is like premium looking, and then you get like one little not, and it just doesn't look right. When it's all kind of like rustic looking, then it's like it's cool. Or you get one little piece of sapwood or something.
Okay.
It's like, where did that come from? But if you kind of mix it throughout the whole project, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. So,
yeah.
Well, you were talking about that with your desk, Logan, about trying to find and arrange parts so that they looked good where they needed to look good, and then like crappier surfaces can be at the back or whatever. And then you and John were talking about this in the leg or in making the table here about a similar process of trying to find the pieces that we need for the project out of what's available.
Yeah. And I've said it before, and I said it when we were doing that. Like, that's the part of this entire process that I really like. Is like, maybe it's a little bit of the treasure hunter in me, but it's like, I know I can get this out of here. How do I make the most out of it? How do I make it look the best with what I have sitting here? And I really,
there's a lot of satisfaction to that process of putting all the pieces together and getting the most out of it.
It makes a freaking mess. I'm sure Steve Johnson was having an aneurysm with all the bark and walnut dust in the shop and stuff. Oh man.
It does, but I think that's a hidden part of woodworking that people don't realize a lot. Especially if you're buying stuff just at home center, 4S kind of materials where you're just getting boards from it. You get it a little bit when you start buying random width boards and you're trying to come up with the best yield and best look at the same time. But there is a delight. It is like treasure hunting of taking like, what can I do to make these pieces look the best that they can?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's the thing that always, and I know everybody that works with rough sawn material knows this, you get to a point where it's like, oh, I'm throwing so much material away. But if it's rough sawn material, you're paying a lot less. Like at the home center, you might not throw that much away, but you're also paying $19 a board foot versus $350 a board foot. So you're still saving a ton of money and you have more control. But like we filled up Chris Fitch's truck with heating material for the next month.
And the thing is, you buy that lumber at the that surface four sides at the home centers, and it's like, you didn't waste that, but somebody else did, and they're making you pay and you're paying for it. You're paying
somebody
for
somewhere did,
that they used to cut that wood out of. So
yeah. But I mean, out of those boards, like there's still some good sized pieces back in the shop that could very easily still be chair parts or boxes
100%.
Custom pulls or trays or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Which, I mean, it's kind of funny because it hasn't been very often. That was an entire tree. So that was every slice out of this walnut tree that was probably 18 inches in diameter. It wasn't a huge walnut tree by any machines. But like, it's not often that you say, okay, here's the entire tree that's been cut up into boards. This is what we got out of it, and this is what we have left. It's kind of cool to see that. Usually it's, pieces here, pieces there. But
anyway, so you'll be able to see that game table later on this fall on season 19 of the Woodsmith Shop. It's kind of fun to think about, we're working on these, and then it's going to be months and months later, and all of a sudden people will be asking about it and talking about it. And we're like, oh yeah, that's right. I totally forgot about that. Let's see what else we got going on. Woodworking in America. Logan and I will be diving into deep meetings on that one starting next week already.
Say already? Oh.
Yeah. So that's October 10 and 11. Everybody block it out on your calendar. You'll want to make time to come to fabulous Des Moines, Iowa for that. We had a blast last year doing it, and I think this year is going to be bigger and better. We got a better venue, or a bigger venue space that'll have its own unique charm to it, and some returning speakers, some new speakers, more vendors, all that kind of stuff. I think we're even toying with the idea of a parking lot boot sale.
Swap meet.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I know my buddy Bobby Three Fingers wants to come out and sell some lumber, which I think he absolutely should. Maybe send out a notification to the MWTCA, Midwest Tool Collector Association, say, hey, this is going on. We want to open it up for a swap meet Saturday morning. I think that'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Send everybody home with crap they don't need, so you know how I feel.
When you say Bobby Three Fingers, it sounds like you're getting lumber from the mafia.
I know. That's the point. That's the point. Yeah.
Maybe Chunkatrunk will be there. We don't know.
Maybe. We'll see. I'm not gonna cut into Bobby's territory though. Made that mistake once.
We don't need another turf war.
No.
What the Duck Farm Fresh Eggs might even be there.
That's right. These are all the businesses that we have not started yet.
Project 2025.
That's funny.
This is the year.
Yep. That's funny. It's funny. So, Phil, you've been working on a door for your house.
Yes.
And you decided to use loose tenons for that.
I did.
After this desk is wrapped up this weekend, my next project is building a set of church doors.
Okay.
Frame and panel church doors, mahogany. I ordered the mahogany, and then it had a lot of issues in it, so I had to return it, and they ordered new stock for it. Why did you choose to do loose tenons versus like stub tenon and groove?
Well, the door is going to end up being a sliding door for a guest room in our basement.
So like a barn door style?
Yeah. It's not going to be a pocket door. It's going to be like a sliding barn door, just to increase the amount of usable space in that room. The reason that I did loose tenon joinery is probably 75% personal preference, in the sense that I've made an entry door for my brother and sister-in-law out of cherry and did conventional mortise and tenon joinery on it. It's fine. The issue that I had with it, and this is where personal preference comes into play, is two things. One is you start sizing parts, but some of the parts you really don't know the size of them because they have tenons on. So it's like I need my door to be X inches wide overall. You know, the stiles are 5.5 inches wide. Now the rails are how long? I don't know. Depends on how deep I cut the mortises and how much, you know, I don't want those tenons to bottom out in the mortises. So they're X amount deep, but it's really the shoulder to shoulder length that is the key driver there. So in my head, loose tenon makes more sense because I can just cut parts to size, you know, and focus on making nicely, accurately sized stiles and rails. And I can lay that out and dry clamp it, and it'd be like, that's the size of the door that I need, and still allow for, you know, final trimming or whatever I need to do at the end. And then in a second step, I can do the joinery. And then the joinery is only one setup. It's just mortises. And I don't have to do a mortising setup and then a separate tenoning setup and have to get both of those right. Instead, I can just do mortises and get that right. It's the same operation essentially on both pieces. I double the amount of mortises that I need to cut, but you know, with a router and a spiral bit, it goes pretty quickly. You know, I know technically the making of the tenon stock is a separate step, but making tenon stock is much easier than making tenons because I can just rip pieces on the bandsaw and then either hand plane them or make skim cuts through a thickness planer until it matches the thickness. And then I have like big long sticks of tenon stock that I can just lop off to length.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And then you're taking out the step of either chiseling the mortise square or rounding a tenon as well. So it's nice.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, like when you cut tenons on the end of a piece, it always seems like somewhere in there a shoulder gets offset. You know, where there's a little bit of a step when you know, are cutting like the edge of it versus the face of it. I don't know. And then now you're fine tuning that with chisels, but then if you do that on two of the rails, are you taking off the same amount so that they're now not quite the same length shoulder to shoulder? It's probably not a huge deal, but like I said, for me, it's about being able to just focus on one thing at a time, like just making parts and now just doing the joinery.
Okay.
That's a really long answer.
That's right. I was just wondering because I am planning, like a door is it's a big project, but it's not a big project, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Stuff has to be right, but there aren't that many parts and they're very simple.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 2 80-inch long rails.
Yeah.
You got, or stiles. You got 3 or 4 rails that are, you know, maybe 24 inches long if you're making a 36-inch wide door. And then panels. Now, these ones I'm working on they're going to be a little bit more complicated because they have the Serbian Orthodox cross built into the frame and panel. So you have a rail that is at like a 30-degree angle, which, again, not that crazy.
Right.
It's just making sure that everything is right. And, you know, you're building an interior door out of pine. These are exterior double doors for the church. And I know many people build doors out of solid wood. Technically, the North America Building Association only allows solid wood doors to be made out of mahogany. And mahogany is the only thing that solid doors can be made out of. Everything else needs to be a veneered, like a core, like a laminated core door. Now, I don't think that's code or anything, but that's just their standard is mahogany is fine for a front door. Everything else needs to have a core that is then veneered with the wood species of choice, which I had thought about for a hot second. Like, should I do that? Like, I could use the white oak I have. It might be kind of cool. It'd be a good technique to show in the magazine, building cores and then using a vacuum press. I'm like, man, this sounds like a lot of work. Like, at the end of the day, I still have to build these damn things. So, like, doing that sounds like a lot of work. If I was doing it for my house, I might, if I wanted to build something else. But instead, I am going to use I'm going to use solid mahogany. Pricing's a little bit more expensive, but I'm saving a lot of labor.
Yeah.
So everything's going to be, I'm going to do grooves and stub tenons on everything, I think.
Okay.
I might chop the mortises a little deeper on this for the rails. But we'll see. So that was part of the reason of buying the shaper, was to do the grooves and stuff on this.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, which I think that plays a role in it too, is like, what are your tooling options?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And I mean, you surely could do doors without a shaper. Right. We've talked about shapers on the podcast before, and that was, I want to do some articles on them as well, because I think they are a really good option. This Harvey one's been fantastic. That's how I built this entire desk. And there are some good options to, like, you know what? You need a 1/2 inch wide groove that's 2 inches deep. Yep, there's a helicopter blade for that. So just got to turn the speed down and let her eat.
Yep.
So that'll be cool. I'm gonna try to pair up that door project with the shaper article, the first shaper article. So
yeah, cool. That'll be fun to see come together. I'm waiting for the weather to warm up a little bit, because I'm going to pre-finish panels before gluing up the door. I just don't want it to be 0.065% humidity before that happens. So
what finish are you going to use on them?
I think I'm going to do a water-based finish just to give it some protection, but I don't think I'm going to paint it per se, but I had thought about that though too, but I just don't I have enough painted stuff in my house.
You know something that just dawned on me?
What's that?
John makes a lot of parts for us. I've seen John do a lot of woodworking, and he's very, very good at it. I don't know if I've ever seen him finishing something.
I don't finish anything.
I don't know if I've ever seen John in the spray booth.
That's his thing. He's a part maker.
Yep. He's a 95% guy. He doesn't do the
somebody else can do the other 5%. That's the hardest part.
He's like middle.
The last 5% is the 95%. It's all the sanding and finishing.
Oh, I've seen you sand plenty of parts. I don't know if I've ever seen you put a finish on something.
I'm trying to think of the last thing that I put a finish on. It's been a while.
You did that door threshold.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, this goes back a little bit, but there was the loft bed jungle gym set.
But that was, I don't know, a while ago. So, but yeah, it's usually just go in the spray booth real quick, throw a couple coats of lacquer on there, call it good.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it simple.
I mean, we were throwing around some shade earlier this week about Logan and his desk doors and drawers for the inside office, and John's cabinet parts that he's still letting acclimate in the photo studio.
2008.
Is that because is the only thing they need finish?
Basically, assembled and finished.
Yeah.
Awesome. But then once
they're all
once I get
over
that done, then what am I going to do? I'll have no purpose. So someday. It's a long-term project.
Yep. I mean, I still have my case clock over there that we did for the TV show that I still need to make a face for. So, and get glass. All right. There's the question. What project is hanging out in your shop that just needs to get finished, but you're not doing it? Let me know. You can send that to woodsmith@woodsmith.com or leave it in the comments section for the whole world to read over on our YouTube channel. Want to give a special shout out here to Grizzly Industrial. This episode of the ShopNotes Podcast is brought to you by Grizzly Industrial, purveyors of fine woodworking machinery since 1983. Buy direct and save at grizzly.com. Thanks for listening to the ShopNotes Podcast, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye.